Welcome to the Future Christian Podcast, your source for insights and ideas on how to lead your church in the 21st century. At the Future Christian Podcast, we talk to pastors, authors, and other faith leaders for helpful advice and practical wisdom to help you and your community of faith walk boldly into the future. Whether you're a pastor, church leader, or a passionate member of your faith community, this podcast is designed to challenge, inspire, and equip you with the tools you need for impactful ministry. And now for a little bit about the guest for this episode.
Welcome to the Future Christian Podcast. Today, Loren Richmond Jr. is in conversation with the Reverend Dr. Angela Williams Gorrell. Dr. Angela is a speaker, author, and consultant. She has taught at several schools, including Yale and Baylor University. Media sources such as the New York Times, NPR, and the Washington Post have highlighted her research. Dr. Angela is the author of Always On, The Gravity of Joy, and a new book, Braving Difficult Decisions, What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do. A reminder before we start today's conversation, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and share Future Christian with a friend. Connect with Loren, Martha, and Future Christian on Instagram. Shoot us an email at loren@resonatemediapro.com with comments, questions, or ideas for future episodes. We appreciate your voice in how we faithfully discern the future of the church.
All right, welcome to the Future Christian Podcast. This is Loren Richmond Jr., and I am pleased to be welcoming today Reverend Dr. Angela Williams Gorrell. Hello, and thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to our conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, I want to say this from the top. A lot of the times, I shouldn't say a lot of times, but oftentimes, folks that I'll have on the podcast don't necessarily relate to like the ethos or the overall themes of the podcast, but just interesting authors like I want to talk to, and this is certainly one of those instances. So I'm hoping it can be relevant to our listeners. So if you're listening, stay tuned because this is Angela is a great book, and I certainly found it helpful, and I hope it's helpful for our listeners too. But before we get into that, anything else you want to say about yourself? What part of the world do you find yourself in today?
I really appreciate, first of all, your generous words about my book. I definitely, when you put something out in the world, you do it, well, for me, I did it from a really vulnerable place of trying in my own life to figure some stuff out. And then, you're like, okay, along the way, a lot of these other people gave me wisdom and I'm going to pass it on. So thank you so much for your words about that. I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I am home today, not on the road. As I get older, I love to travel, but also not too much. I love to travel, to speak. I feel really honored and excited whenever people come, ask me to, but I also love to be home. And so, especially in the fall, Santa Fe is a gorgeous little mountain town. And so it's not hot right now. It's not freezing. It's just like the most perfect fall day. I'm really, really grateful for it.
Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Share, if you would, kind of about your background, your faith journey, what that looked like in the past and what that looks like today.
I was raised in the church. I was one of those babies whose parents were taking me to church the first Sunday after I was born kind of thing. Something that most parents in a post-COVID, or we still have COVID, but right after a pandemic, we just can't really imagine it. But my parents took me to church and passed me around to everyone the first Sunday after I was born. So I was born into a really deeply Christian spiritual family. And for me growing up, for a number of reasons, it was not easy to be the child that I was. I had a really difficult speech impediment. I was born deaf, all these other things we could go into. But had a hard childhood, just felt really disconnected from others in a number of ways. And then my family, had some difficulties. And so for me, the church, especially I started to notice in middle school, was a sanctuary for me. It was this place I could go. It was a safe haven where people mentored me and helped me, and I think really saw me and helped me to feel seen by God. And so for me, a lot of my spirituality has been sort of, I think, grounded in those sentiments and experiences that I had where I was like, I want to give this away to other young people. I really saw this in my own, I felt this in my spirit in high school and in college. Like I want to go into ministry so that I can create or help to nurture a sanctuary, safe havens in other young people's lives. I want them to feel seen by God, heard by God. I want them to feel like God cares for them and loves them, and that they can live in community with other people. And so that was like the trajectory of my faith and my life. And then about, almost a decade ago, had a really difficult series of events in my family where I had 3 family members die in 4 weeks in a really tragic way. Yeah. Mm-hmm. In really tragic ways. And at the same time, I was working at Yale University. I was a researcher there. And I was teaching a class called Life Worth Living. And I really felt in my own spirit like the collision of all these things. And it just really challenged my sense of who is God? When the world is suffering, where is God? I really dove deep into this time in my life where I feel like God went silent. So for all my life, I felt like until this point, a decade ago, I felt like God sees us, God hears us, God loves us. And then all of a sudden, God was silent. And I was like, it tested sort of every fundamental thing that I believed about God. And so in the last decade, I've had to answer some big questions around faith myself. I've had to I found myself like leading this class, Life Worth Living. And one of the big questions we ask in this class is, how should we respond to suffering? If my life involves suffering and pain, can my life still be good? And so I found myself not only leading the Life Worth Living journey, but also asking and answering these big questions for myself. And what I've really, I think, come to like be at peace with in the last few years is that there are seasons of faith, and every few years or so, just like there are seasons of every aspect of our life, we have to kind of recommit to things. We have to re-examine our values, re-examine our beliefs, re-examine our practices, and reflect. And sometimes we edit those, delete those, we add to those, and that's been kind of the period of life that I've been in.
Yeah, this is really good stuff already. I'm thinking I want to ask this about, like, you mentioned like the evaluation of practices. I'm curious if there's any you're willing to share that maybe something you've had to edit or adjust as a practice, maybe take on or drop off for this season of life.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've had to, I'm really grateful. I had a spiritual director while I was getting my PhD that really walked me through a number of like different practices that I could become open to right before all this tragedy struck in my family. And by the way, so my family members died by suicide, by opioid addiction, and my nephew died at 22 of a heart condition, like really suddenly. Wow. So each death was not just like in rapid succession, but it was the nature of the deaths that really like pushed against a lot of my, like the way that I saw God, saw the world, saw, human beings, all this stuff. So one of the things that my spiritual director, when I called her and I told her about what had happened. And so I moved away. I used to see her regularly when I lived in Los Angeles, was getting my PhD. I moved to Connecticut to work at Yale. And I called her a number of months, like about 3 months after everything happened. And we met up when I was on spring break. I went and saw her and she said, yeah, come see me. And we were sitting together and she was like, Angela, silence is the language of God. or it's one of the languages of God.
Right.
And so it helped me I really began to understand the story of Elijah when he's on the mountain and he's waiting
Yeah, I
for
was
God to
thinking of
pass
that.
by.
Yeah.
Yeah. I started to understand that story in a very, in my own way, in a very personal, close way. Okay, God's not in the fire. God's not in the earthquake. God is not in the whirlwind. And sometimes God is. It wasn't until I really examined the story that I realized, oh, wait, there are times in the Bible when God is in all of these things. But for Elijah and in my own life, God was in the silence. And if I could look for it, listen for it in new ways in my life. And so meditation became a really consistent practice in my life that became really important for me. And so it's to this day, over the last few years, I've had to learn a lot about it in order to act. I've had to just practice it. Meditation is not something that you can think your way through.
Yeah.
When I say learn about it, I just mean that I had to watch other people do it. I had to do an app with it, and I had to start with guided meditation and this and that. But about a year ago, I joined an online meditation group, and that helped me to practice it even more, to sit with other people in silence for 20 minutes. Just became a really powerful way of a few different things. One, in meditation, you recognize when a thought comes to you, but then you can imagine putting it into a little boat and letting it float down the river away from you. And it doesn't mean it's not important. It doesn't mean it's not actually a thing. It just means I'm going to let this go right now. I'm going to release this right now. And so that's become, a way of listening to God for me that's been new and different, but also really healing for me.
Yeah, such good stuff here. And I'm looking forward to talking more about how the book and all this connects. I want to start with, so Angela's the author of Braving Difficult Decisions, What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do. And I'm laughing at that subtitle because this book kind of came to me when I was a similar context in life where I didn't know what to do. And I want to start with this. I'm trying to find the quote here. You write about two ways of going through life. Oops, I'm in the wrong book. Keep going. Two ways of going through life. Share, if you would, talk about those two different ways of going through life.
So you can go through life trying to manipulate everything, fix everything, define everything, figure out everything, manage everything. That's one way to go through life. Just grasping at control, ultimately. If I could just do, and you can fill in the blank for yourself. Mm-hmm. If I could just get this much more time, if I could just do this with my money, if I could just get this much more power or recognition, if I could just get this person to love me differently, if I could just get this promotion, write that book, be that much more powerful, important, I would love my life better. I would like life more. I would, and so it's just, it's a one way of moving through life is to grasp for control consistently. And then the other way, and so you can picture this if you're listening, and I'm so glad you're here if you're listening with us. We know that your time is so precious. And so if you're cooking or walking or strolling somewhere or driving and you're listening to us, you could imagine just walking through life, just with your fingertips trying to grasp at things or holding on tightly with your fists closed. That's one way of moving through life. The other way is the invitation, I think, of the Christian faith, which is an invitation to surrender. Mm-hmm. It's release. It's letting go. It is saying, God, I don't have control over my finances, other people. I have no power over my external environment. But God, you are the one to whom everything belongs. And so I release it all to you. I make it an offering to you. And even it's a way, surrender also looks like acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like, I don't like the way that this is right now, but it is the way that it is.
Mm-hmm.
I accept my circumstances as they are. And this way of moving through life, a way of like powerlessness, of recognizing that, of surrender, of offering, is something, I think it's a way of inviting God in, because God has room and can move when we live with open hands or in surrender.
Yeah. I want to read these words from your book because they strike me as so similar to my co-host Martha Tatarnik has a book, Why Gather, and in the book she talks about ultra-realism, I think, as a practice she's done during her marathon training. But you have these quotations. At this moment, my life is like this.
Mm-hmm.
I wish this had different timing, but this is what it is. Like, I am laughing through gritted teeth, Angela, here. I do not like this, but it is what it is right now. Like, I've had to say these things or very much similar things to myself in the not too distant past, and it was helpful for me. And I frankly still say things like this to myself when I think about, like, I have a tendency, like we all do, I imagine, but for me, I know I have a tendency to like compare myself to other people and other situations and contexts and careers and situations in life. And I'm like, you know what? I've chose this, and I probably shouldn't frame this quite so negatively, but for me, it's a helpful reminder. Like, I am where I am because my choices have consequences. So I appreciate that, that acceptance of framing reality as it is. Like, again, these themes, like, harsh, and maybe I'm making it too harsh. And I'm wondering, like, I think some might think like, oh, we should be more positive or optimistic or hopeful. And I certainly don't think you'd be like that. But what is it really valuable, like this kind of stark realism?
Because anything other than acceptance, I think, looks like resistance. It looks like resentment, worry, fear, anger. And there's righteous anger, but I just mean the kind that like eats you from the inside out.
Yeah.
So I feel like the alternative is to live in yesterday and to live in a really negative perception of yesterday, or it's to live in a really unhelpful tomorrow. And unhelpful, like it's sort of idealized tomorrow instead of right now. And I think that there's an invitation by so many spiritual guides throughout history and that live today, like into the now, into the present. Like, this is my life as it is. So even if I don't like it, God, help me to accept that this is the reality of my life right now. And then if I can look at the reality of my life really clearly right now with those open hands, with surrender, then I think God can then say, okay, this is the next right step. Then that's where our prayer becomes. So it's like, I accept that this is the reality. Because for so many people, like, to not live in the present and not accept the reality as it is either like I said, they're denying their reality. They're living in some alternative reality, which is so not helpful to them. And probably really unhelpful to the people around them. They're ignoring the state of things. So they're not able to like move forward. They're going to be paralyzed, or they're living in what could have been if I had just done A, B, or C, if I had not, if I had avoided, right? And then you're just living with this regret and resentment.
Frustration.
That just like weighs you down.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to read this. You write about prayer, this full quote here, because I think it's so good. You write, people often think prayer is what happens before or after something, but the prayer is also a something. It's an action that draws attention. Moves us, connects us, can be felt by others, centers, calms, nurtures, teaches, guides. It is doing something meaningful even when we aren't entirely aware of what is happening. the same is true of surrender.
It's always so interesting to hear your words right back to you. But yeah, I feel like that's something that I've learned in my own spiritual life, is that when I pray, it's not just, because like we can think of it sometimes as like the first way of going through life. If I could just manipulate God enough, if I could just control God enough, or my circumstance, if I could just manifest this with my brain, then this will happen the way I want it to. But instead, I feel like prayer in my own study and experience of it, and like I said, a number of spiritual guides who've taught me over the years through their books, through their TED Talks, through their podcasts, like whatever, through their preaching, is like, no, prayer it shifts me in alignment with God. Like prayer is literally like aligning my will with God's. If I pray, God, I want to see like you see. I want my heart to break for the things that break your heart. I want to long for what you want me to long for. I want to be in relationship with my circumstances in the ways that you want me to. And so, and then prayer is that calming. It can be that shift, like, God, release me from the bondage of fear, of worry, of resentment, of regret, and then instill in me humility and truth and love, whatever you need God to put into your spirit. Like we can be praying for those things,
Yeah, it's really good. Something that also stood out to me was you talk about the importance of understanding feelings as information, but not as stopping points. Talk about that, the importance of making that distinction.
Yeah, so I'm not somebody who says like feelings don't matter, or feelings are always. I think some people feel like that feelings are always like there to like take you astray and like don't give in to them, or whatever. Right. But feelings are information in the sense that they do signal something. So feelings start as motions, energy and motion in our body. And then we tell ourselves the story of what has happened. And that story of what has happened has really good data or information for us to attend to. Okay, so I had an experience with this person in this place with these people. I told myself this thing. And so then we can say, okay, what's true there? Is there something I need to be paying attention to? Like, is there a reason why I need, that I'm noticing that I'm angry? Is there a reason why I'm nervous? Or, is there a reason that I need to fear? Like, is there something so I think that God can speak to us through our feelings, like the way that we make sense of our experiences, and that God gave us feelings for a reason. And I point out this in the book that in the life of Jesus, we see feelings like anger. We see him get really upset. We see him weep. And so they're like, to express emotions is to be incredibly human. It's a very human, important thing. But then I don't think we want to just sit in difficult feelings, especially. We don't want to just live angry, live depressed, live in gloom, live fearful. No, like we want to use this information. We want to work through our feelings constructively and then, figure out the right next step.
Yeah, I think that's so important because like I see the opposite sometimes where it's like my feelings are facts, my feelings are gospel, and I appreciate your point you're making of like what can I learn from my feelings? What are they teaching me rather than me just staying in them? I want to move on to this idea that I think is very profound and also I think sometimes hard to accept. I was thinking about, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Heather Thompson Day. I had her on the podcast like 3 years ago, and she wrote, I think, this book like When It's Not Your Turn, and basically like, if I remember correctly, it was basically like, how to, similar kind of book to what you wrote, like how to deal with life when like things don't seem to be going your way. And like I feel like she had a very similar theme of like trusting that we're part of God's bigger story. And again, I want to just read this quote here because it was profound to me. You write, "You and me were also part of a great story being told." And I like that you capitalize the G and the S in great story. we participate in this story. This is a story that mysteriously says God loves everything and made it all good. Everyone belongs, and it's all being restored. And resurrection, not death, always, always gets the last word. I mean, I've read your book, so, I have some sense that you've been through some challenging stuff. Like, I read this, I'm getting emotional myself here. I read this at a challenging time in my own life, so those words, like, stuck out to me big time, and I had to, like, kind of trust, like, God's not through with me yet. God has a plan. God has a purpose. There's a bigger story.
Yeah.
Like, what was helpful for you to kind of just trust and lean into that?
Yeah. There's so many things I could say, but first of all, Loren, thank you so much for your vulnerability in this moment and just saying, I'm so glad that we are connecting over both of us having these times in our life where we're like, okay, I thought I knew who I was, or like I thought I had things figured out. And then all of a sudden, I'm at this crossroads, or, I don't know if I have everything figured out, or I don't know what to do. And I'm trying to seek you and I'm trying to hear from you. I think the thing that I needed to hear in the journey of writing this book and in the two big decisions that I was going through a discernment period with that really shaped this book, was that even if I made a wrong turn, even if I didn't do the right thing, like it was like this realization one day that, like, thank God, like my decisions don't, like, God's story that God is telling in the world don't hinge on any decision that I make.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that wherever I go in this life, whatever I do, whatever I say, like all of us, like, are caught up in the grace and the love of God, and that story, like, covers it all. That I still get to participate in that story, and God's still telling that story. Like and so it's like, I both feel the insignificance of that, of my decisions, which was like really helpful to me. But then I also feel the significance of my life. Like, you're caught up in that story, as is everyone else, Angela, and I was just, and so it comforted me. It was like this word from God that I really needed at that time in my life.
Yeah. Again, like, this feels much like the episode with Heather Thompson Day in her book, like, because it's like, I think we have this sometimes a assumption that we can, like, frustrate or ruin God's plan and purpose, like, which is kind of like super backwards if we think about, like, that humans could, like, frustrate God's attempts or God's actions to, like, bring about wholeness and healing in the world. Like, surely God has a plans, right? To, like, God has backup plans on backup plans, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a helpful reminder.
Absolutely. And I think too, I can't remember if I tell this story in the book, Loren. Maybe you'll be able to tell me whether I do or not. You know how you like tell so many stories, you live so many stories, and then you're like, did I write that down? I don't know. But I was sitting in class. I'm still a professor. I taught just like an hour and a half ago. I love teaching so much. But I was sitting in class a few years ago, and the class was called Jesus and the Meaning of Life. And on this particular day, we were thinking about death and dying. And the class, like, looked at all these different aspects of life. In this particular day happened to be death and dying. And then we do almost the whole class. And then one of my students, she raises her hand and she says, on this day when I was in high school, so she's a college student now, right? So she says, on this day when I was in high school, my dad died by suicide.
Wow.
And she said, after my dad died, I went on this, like, search for religion, because I grew up in a secular household. I grew up in a household where we didn't really feel like we needed religion. And then all of a sudden, when my dad died, I was like desperate for it. And so I sought out this, I learned all about this religion and this and this and this, but like Christianity was the most compelling religion to me. I was so compelled by the life and teachings of Jesus. And then she said, she started to cry like I am, but she said, Did God need my dad to die by suicide for me to find religion? Like to find God? And I just felt the Spirit say to me in that moment as a professor, like, ask them. And so I looked at all my students and we're all sitting in a circle. That's how we did this class, all 20 of us. And I said, what do you say? What do you think? And for a question like this, it felt brave to let other people respond. And I waited for 2-3 minutes. It was like a long pause. And I was just felt the Spirit though, Angela, just wait. And then one of my students, he called her by her name. And then he said, God has always loved you. God has always been seeking you. God has always wanted you to know God. But maybe it was just in this moment after your dad's death that you could see it.
Wow.
And it was after this in class that I was able to listen to the passage in Romans where it says, all things work together for good.
Yeah.
I had always hated that scripture, Loren, because I was like, how is this good? But I started to see it differently where it's this thing and this horrible thing and that really, really messed up thing and this thing that broke my heart and this way that I went that was wrong or whatever. All this somehow miraculously goes toward the good of God. I don't know how, but God's ultimate good, everything gets caught up in it.
Well, I feel like we need to give that just a moment to sit itself. Thank you for sharing that. I do want to talk also, and I feel like this feels so light compared to the profound story you just shared, but I feel like it's helpful to think about, and I suppose it's related. You talk about choosing acute pain versus a dull ache.
Yeah.
On 131, you say, sometimes we're also choosing between a dull ache that we have learned to live with and a gut-wrenching pain that seems unbearable. Most of us prefer chronic pain over acute pain. And again, I don't want to speak for you here, but I'm thinking, for instance, the acute pain you're talking about is not like that story. We're not choosing suffering for ourselves. We're not choosing heartbreak. Let me frame it this way, and you can tell me if I'm on track here. A year ago, over a year ago, I realized I was in a job I really didn't like, and I didn't really see a future for myself, and didn't really feel like it jived with what I want for my life and my future, my family, all that. So I kind of was do I just kind of keep grinding along this kind of chronic pain of being low-key miserable and unhappy and grumpy at home because I have to go to work, this job I don't like, blah, blah. Or did it kind of take this acute pain of making sort of a jump and leap of faith of oh, this is super scary. So yeah, is that track with what you're trying to get across here?
Absolutely. Yeah. And this is, the reality for a lot of us is that, in general, many of us will, in making a decision, choose pain. It doesn't, some of us are choosing between two good things. And if that's you today, amazing. And my book, hopefully, and hopefully my book helps people that are also choosing between two really good things or multiple good things. But oftentimes, at some point in our adult lives, we are choosing between two really hard things, but one of my friends, Michaela, she pointed this out to me one day, you're choosing between acute pain and chronic pain. And sometimes, and so, yeah, it's the chronic pain, you knew how to be at your workplace. You knew how to deal with, you're like, it's Monday morning again. I know how to get through Monday.
Yeah.
I know how to, I know how this goes. And so it's a pain you've learned to live with, a pain you've learned to manage.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean you enjoy it, but that familiarity,
right?
There's almost a comfort there. Like, I know what I'm doing. When we're ripping the Band-Aid off, so to speak, and we're choosing this other hard thing that we don't know what kind of pain is going to bring us, or the acuteness of it sometimes is like, all of a sudden, I had these colleagues and I don't anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I knew where I was going on Monday morning. Now I don't anymore. Someone else was paying my health care or my retirement. Now someone else isn't. Or I chose this other job and, and even though it's different, there's still, there's this, this lack of familiarity that's really hard for me, or whatever it is, and the same thing happens in relationships. Like, when I shouldn't be in a relationship with this family member anymore, or this friend, or this romantic partner. And you make that decision, if it's been a lot of chronic pain, if you have had this relationship, you've known this family member your whole life, but you realize, this is a really unhealthy relationship for me. This is causing really low self-worth. This person is damaging my sense of self. We're constantly arguing, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But that's familiar. It feels like home. To then break off that relationship with that person, it's like, it's a new kind of pain that you have to learn to deal with.
Yeah. So this is a podcast that we aim to speak to pastors and church leaders. So I kind of want to make one, I suppose, comment or section to someone who's in that position, if only because I think these things we're talking about still really matter and are very applicable. In many parts of American Christianity, it seems like there's two just bad choices for churches and leaders. It's a tough situation. For many churches are struggling economically, financially. There's no clear future ahead. And I know because I felt this in my own times in professional ministry where it feels like what you're putting out there is just being wasted. So I kind of want to tie this to one of the things you talk about in your book of nothing being wasted in God's economy. Cause I've preached that. I preached at a church closing that had been around for 150 years. And I preached nothing is ever wasted in God's economy or something to that effect. Right. And I preached at my own church closing a few years ago. And first of all, I didn't say it. Second of all, I wouldn't have believed it in the moment, it's so much harder when you're in that context, inside versus outside. So, I think, again, a profound point you made. What else do you have to share there, and what thoughts do you have for those who have been or are in a ministry setting?
First of all, it just if you're listening and this is you and you're making really difficult decisions for a team of people that are impacting an organization. You're making difficult decisions that are disrupting, you're having to let people go. Mm-hmm. Your budget is shrinking. Your building needs to be sold. Whatever it is, or you feel no matter which way you're turning, that there's just been pain left and right, that no matter what you preach, what you say, what you do, it's not enough for people. It's not reaching people.
Right.
Whatever it is, that every decision, it's not growing. I feel so first of all, I just want to say, I lament with you. I have been there in a variety of ways in my own life and work where it just feels like this thing felt so senseless, so ridiculous, so hard, so irredeemable, But what I meant by that is, and I want to be so careful here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that God causes suffering in people's life. I don't think that God is let me give you this so that, like, this really hard thing so that you can cultivate strength or resilience. Like, that's just not how I can relate to God. It's not how I make sense of my theology, of my understanding of God.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I just want to say, like, I think that anything that we offer to God, anything that's a part of an offering, like any part of our life, can get caught up in that great story and be moved toward the good. Like that, that's what I mean by that is, my friend Willie Jennings, he's a professor at Yale. He says we can make our pain productive without glorifying or justifying suffering.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where this is like adjacent to that is like everything that happens, like, you know, can be moved toward the good. Everything that happens, we can use with God's help, to do something meaningful in the world. And that even if something ends, even if something breaks, even if something, you know, like, that it doesn't mean it wasn't ever meant to be. It doesn't mean that it was nothing. It doesn't mean that it shouldn't have been. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that sometimes if like things end really poorly, we're just like, oh, that should never have been.
Right.
And I think we don't want to write it all off. Yeah.
Yeah. I think 100% I would agree. Like, I think there is this tendency, I don't know if it's American culture or white American culture or what it is, but I do think there's that tendency, like, if it was great, but it didn't end well, it's like, well, we shouldn't have done it at all.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your point about that being two different things. I do want to ask, I think this is coming to mind. Like, I just posted something on Substack at the time of this recording. Basically, like, I'm sure you probably get this sense too. Like, America, we're probably going to go through like, we've been going through some challenging times, and we'll probably still have more challenging times in front of us, where there's going to be a lot of like difficult decisions to be made that are not going to feel good in the moment. Like, thinking about it from the context of this book, like, I assume to some extent you're on the other side, if only because you had the context and wherewithal to like write the book and write it down and observe, like, hey, I'm somewhat through this. Like, what, you know, you talked about prayer and meditation sustaining you. Like, what kind of would you help or offer to people to like latch onto as a thought of hope, if that makes sense?
You mean like during this particular moment in American history?
I mean, you can answer that however you feel, whether it's personally or whether it's societally. Like, thinking about just being in tough times, having been through it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
What does the other side look like?
I think one of the things is that healing is possible. And that you won't always feel the way that you do. And I don't mean like healing in the way of forgetting. Right. Or healing in, healing in the way of like, oh, that thing, when I think of it, doesn't like make me sad ever again.
Right.
But I just mean that, like, my sister Steph, whose son is the one that died, Mason, Steph says, once you have a death like this in your life, like, you always carry a grief backpack. Like, you just like are always wearing that backpack everywhere you go. And I really agree with her. But the thing is like, you do learn to move through life with it, and you carry it differently in different seasons of your life. And so if you're in this like season of just like your heart is totally broken and you're just having a hard time getting out of bed every day, like, there is a day that comes when you feel like, oh my goodness, like, I've gotten on the road toward healing. Like, I'm starting to feel joy again. Like, joy is creeping in and I'm giving myself over to it, as Mary Oliver would say. And like, I can't really help it. Where the light's coming in. I'm noticing the goodness of others, of God, of my life in this small way, like again, And so I do think that, that you'll carry it differently over time, and that the light does eventually come back in.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, I want to keep talking about this, but also like I want to respect your time, and also want to respect like just your emotional and my own emotional kind of like limits here. So I really appreciate you sharing. For our listeners, the book is Braving Difficult Decisions: What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do. We didn't even talk about this. I feel like you talked about the importance here of like making kind of values, which we didn't even talk about, which is again, right, something that I'd highly recommend. It was helpful for me just to kind of like, because if I feel like when you're kind of in that real like stuck point, it's like, I don't even know what to do. Then you can have those kind of list of values of like, this is what really matters to me, and I'm not being overwhelmed by my feelings in the moment and blah, blah, blah. But again, Braving Difficult Decisions: What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do. Highly recommend it. Go check it out. Let's take a quick break and we'll come back with some closing questions. All right, we're back with Dr. Angela, Reverend Doctor. I want to give you your full titles there. Reverend Dr. Angela Williams Gorrell. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate your honesty and forthrightness in our conversation. So closing questions, hopefully they'll be a little lighter than our past here conversation.
We'll see.
If you're Pope for a day, what might that day look like for you?
Yeah, my friend Liz says that I live in the deep end of life, Loren. So
Okay.
I don't know how to do small talk. The thing is that the first thing when I saw this question, when I was looking over your questions for today, and I was like, well, I couldn't be Pope because I'm a woman. And so I guess if I got the ability, if I was Pope for a day, I'd want to highlight what women throughout history have done for the church.
Okay, yeah.
And be like, hello, why don't we have any women that could be Pope? But
yeah, I'm writing that down. That's good. I like that. Yeah, see, I appreciate your not getting stuck on that. Some people like get stuck on the mechanics of that. Like, so thank you for that.
And I highlight a few of them in my book: Perpetua, Dorothy Day, Dolores Huerta, and on and on. But
okay, well that leads well into our next question of a theologian or historical Christian figure you might want to meet or bring back to life.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Anyone in my book that is not still living, I would want to meet, because they're all just sheroes and heroes to me. But I actually, I think my spiritual hero is Howard Thurman. It's been said that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had two things on him at all times: a copy of the Bible and a copy of Howard Thurman's Jesus and the Disinherited. So, I mean, he was an incredible mentor and spiritual guide to the Reverend Dr. King, but also it was just so many. And I would love to sit with Howard Thurman and have dinner with him. I love Meditations on the Heart as well, like an incredible little devotional book. So, just a well of wisdom.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Okay, I suppose here with your more, living from a more, how do you say it, serious, or your friends say it from a more serious place?
Oh, I live in the deep end of life.
In the deep end, yeah. What do you think history will remember for our current time and place? I guess I should put some parentheses that these are meant to be quick hitters that don't go too deep.
Yeah. Sadly, I feel like we're going to remember the division. That I don't know that there's never been a point in my own in my life on this planet that I've ever seen each side like villainize the other as much as we do. The lack of like respect and diplomacy for the other side. And so just a really huge rift between Republicans and Democrats. I think we will remember that.
Yeah. What do you hope for the future of Christianity?
I forgot about this one, Loren. Everything. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I think my greatest hope would be that the great story that you quoted, like everyone belongs, everyone, like I just hope that like becomes more famous. Like the way that we talk about the gospel as this like expansive love. I feel like we've sort of lost, like, I don't know that that's like the first thing that comes out of people's mouths or comes to people's imaginations when they think of Christian. I don't know that God's expansive love is the thing that comes to people's mind that are not Christians.
Yeah.
And I wish it were so. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, where can people connect with you, find out more about you, copy the book, all that stuff?
Yeah, you can buy Braving Difficult Decisions wherever books are sold. All kinds of like cool independent stores too, like Bookshop and everything. And you could also just go to your local bookstore, and if you ask them to order a book for you, they will. And so if you want to support a local store, you can too. I love to connect with people on Facebook, Instagram, or through my website, where you can, if you email me through my website on any page, there's a thing at the bottom, I will respond to you. So DM me, message me. I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. Cool. Well, again, I really appreciate your time. Really appreciate the conversation and your book. Like, I really recommend to others. So thank you again. We always leave folks with a word of peace. So may God's peace be with you.
Thanks for joining us on the Future Christian Podcast. The Future Christian Podcast is produced by Resonate Media. We love to hear from our listeners with questions, comments, and ideas for future episodes. Visit our website at future-christian.com and find the Connect with Us form at the bottom of the page to get in touch with Martha or Loren. But before you go, do us a favor. Subscribe to the pod to leave a review. It really helps us get this out to more people. Thanks, and go in peace.